And here they are. Not people who are not on Zoom. That's amazing. Åsa Minoz is the innovation strategist at the Viable Cities, and Dan Hill is the director of strategic design at Vinnova. Åsa, could you give us an overview of the collaboration between Vinnova and Viable Cities around missions and how this relates to the topic of the conference today?
Yes. Actually, mission-oriented innovation or mission-driven innovation, our mission is to achieve climate-neutral cities by 2030 with a good life for all within planetary boundaries. And actually, we've been working together. I think we have sound. Do we have sound? Okay, it doesn't work. Is the sound on? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we've been working since the beginning of 2019 together with Vinnova on driving, kind of exploring how do we do this in practice? How do we drive a change that is transformative? And at Vinnova, at Viable Cities, it is really, really key that we put citizens at the center of these efforts. It's about a systemic view of transforming our cities to become sustainable and climate neutral with the citizens as the center. So the way we work together with Vinnova is to explore ways of doing this in practice.
Absolutely.
And there we have, on the one hand, worked with the streets and how do we transform the city from the viewpoint of how do we use public space and the city
So it's going back to
space.
what we heard earlier today about talking to citizens rather than about citizens, and also taking a user-centered perspective, if we want to use a tech term on citizens.
So it's going back to what Lena Langley was saying. It's not only for citizens, it's by citizens and with citizens.
Dan, would you briefly describe work you're doing on future streets and what you're aiming for in collaboration with Viable Cities?
Sure. I mean, we'll get into this more in this afternoon's session, I guess. But since we started working together early last year, we were looking for this, as Åsa said, how do we figure out this mission-oriented innovation? We're looking for a mission, which is kind of a container for aligning multiple projects with a certain direction. It's basically all a mission is, in a way. And of course, we started exploring a few of those. And one of the most obvious ones with cities is things like streets. They're a perfect example of where all systems converge, essentially, whether that's retail or housing or mobility or energy or politics or culture, conviviality, all of those things happen on the street one way or another. So, and it's roughly, between 10, 20, 30% of the space of any city. It involves funding, politics, organization, everything. So it's a perfect kind of little prototyping space from my point of view. And as you said a moment ago, it enables us to do user-centered design and very place-centered design. We can talk specifically about specific streets and the communities around them. And we can also see that typology exists all over the country. We worked out there's something like 40,000 kilometers of street in Sweden, one way or another. So it's like 600 square kilometers, I think, which is 6 times the size of Paris if you added all of that together. So that's kind of like an addressable space. And so we can address that up and down the country, whether it's Västervik or Helsingborg or Umeå or Stockholm.
And it's also seen to be something much more tangible than talking about the Paris Accord, or that we need to do something, sort of here's something concrete space we could interact with.
Exactly. And so underneath, let's say, the Viable Cities mission, which also just described, we need to then get down to the next level and say, so what does that translate to? A good life for all within planetary boundaries, is that climate neutral? So there are many missions there, of course. We need to look at housing and housing retrofit and Miljon program in the context of Sweden. That's a great mission potentially right there.
Yeah.
But streets is one where we could actually say, okay, there are many cities already addressing this outside Sweden and within Sweden. It's something we have to do sooner or later because it's where mobility systems and everything converges. And as I said, it's this addressable layer, but you can make it super tangible and concrete. You can stop someone at a bus stop and look at the street, and we say, is this healthy or unhealthy? Or is this sustainable or unsustainable? And they would have a view on that right away because they're in it all the time. It's an everyday infrastructure that they live within.
And for those of us who are slightly new to this area, this field of sort of city planning, in the past it was done sort of in silos by different departments at the municipality level, or?
Yeah, I mean, not originally, actually. And of course, if we look at cities that have been around for thousands of years, usually the places we go on holiday, in, say, Italy, you can see
Rome wasn't planned in a day.
exactly. Probably wasn't planned.
No, exactly.
So it was, but out of those kind of organic environments, you find a street is not about traffic, for instance. It's about connection and conviviality and community and commerce and other things beginning with C. So all of those things happen there. It's why we love sitting in a piazza, and you can move across it in a very fluid way. And then in around the middle of the 20th century, when we started zoning things out and separating them into functions, because that seemed like the right thing to do at the time, then absolutely you start saying, okay, traffic control, you look after that bit, and then housing is over here, and industry is over here, and commerce is over here. And that was, you could argue that maybe worked for a couple of decades, but now, since then, we've been trying to put that back together and say a city is a diverse place, it's a certain kind of density of interaction together, and that's far more resilient. People living and working and playing in the same space. You get intergenerational communities. All of those things can happen in that. So the street actually then isn't about traffic, and we have to open it back up to
what we have today is basically a parenthesis in the history of city development, where you look at things from a very narrow view, and now we're sort of going back to a broader thing.
Exactly, and we're knitting together those functions in the same space, and which picks up Åsa's earlier point about then this is why we have to do it with citizens. Yeah. It's
also
not something you can do technically from the outside as like an expert. It has to be from within that place.
Åsa, where do you hope to be in this collaboration, say, 6 months from now?
Together with Vinnova, we hope to kind of explore ways of working with our cities and with our stakeholders within viable cities to really concrete efforts to co-create the future cities, not least together with the citizens. And we hope to get on board a few of these cities in working with street together with Vinnova. And we have a workshop this afternoon that is one step on the way to doing that.